Oh, perfect. Thank you. Well, we have folks that are trickling in, and for the sake of time, because this meeting is so important, and also because Professor Al Tillery has been so broadly and widely requested from the symposium, we want to jump right into it. So welcome to our April 25th strategy session. We will put our reports on the back end of this meeting so that we could get right into the matter at hand. Today we have my colleague, the great Professor Alvin Tillery, a professor at Northwestern University. He also has founded and established center at Northwestern, and maybe he'll tell us about that quickly. But we want to jump right into the work. I will need to note that Professor Al Tillery was key in us engaging our community and reporting on how hearts and minds have been changing, measuring the impact of reparations in Evanston. As we're able to at this point, it's going to be a ways before we could measure closing the wealth gap and other metrics that are being considered like that. But Professor Al Tillery is responsible for that report. Before the end of the meeting, we'll make sure that we put the link to that report and his center in the chat so that you might feel free to follow up with him directly if you're interested in your community having a similar partnership. Thank you, Al, for being here.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. I hope to live up to it. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. And thank you to everyone on the call for the work you're doing. I see my friend Enith Williams is on the call, which makes me happy. And I'm sure there are others on whom I know, but just can't see. And I'm really, really glad to be part of this dialogue. Okay, now, am I sharing properly? Can you all see my screen? Okay, great. So I just want to talk in broad brush strokes about where we are. Robin gave you some, oh, sorry, the police are racing by, arresting my students. So, and that's part of what I want to talk about today, the context. So, my Center for the Study of Diversity and Democracy, I founded it in 2017 to do translational research about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. And, largely because I was really freaked out about Donald Trump taking office. I grew up in that generation of Black Americans that integrated everything. I integrated my neighborhood, my bus stop. I'm a lynching survivor as a result of that experience, integrating my neighborhood. And I just got really freaked out that like my two beautiful little Black kids were going to grow up in a country that was actually retrenching on racial rights. And so I founded my center to try to be a bulwark against that from an academic standpoint. And help institutions that are trying to make progress toward racial justice work. As you can see, because the police are racing by, arresting my students right now, and universities are not always well positioned to do racial justice work. So I also have a consultancy called the 2040 Strategy Group, where I do this work for corporations, governments, nonprofits, international organizations outside of the Northwestern purview, so they don't get uncomfortable and try to shut down some of the things that I do. And so what I want to talk about today is the current political climate. That's what Robin asked me to talk about, and how it simultaneously is cutting against the work that you're doing, but also, providing some unique opportunities, I think, to help you advance your work. And so I'm going to talk in 3 short modules. One, talk about the results of the Evanston Reparations Survey, talk about the Harvard Affirmative Action ruling, and what that means for the broader context of our politics, right? And how that ruling that happened last July is really just the first brick in a systematic effort to restore the Jim Crow era to American life, and how we have a lot on the line with this election. Because Mr. Trump has stated that on his first day in office, he will overturn the Civil Rights Act by banning, federal government agencies and contractors from collecting what we call EEO-1 data. So EEO-1 data is whenever you apply to something or you go to somewhere, you check the box saying what you are, and that allows the EEOC and other organizations to help monitor for discriminatory behavior in, say, workplace settings, et cetera. Now, there are weak monitors already, but by breaking that process, it will essentially mean that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 will be invalidated. Some of you remember in 2013, in the case of Shelby County, the United States, the Supreme Court, under the leadership of John Roberts, nullified something called Section 5 preclearance of the Voting Rights Act. That meant that states no longer had to send data to the Department of Justice to approve their voting rights changes. And that essentially nullified the Voting Rights Act. And immediately, Southern states started suppressing the voting behavior of Black voters. And so that's the move they want to make with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There's great alarm that we should all have around that. And then I'll talk a little bit about what the Evanston reparations process as a model for sustainable racial equity programs, how we can push in that direction regardless of what's coming down the pipeline electorally, right? So, we did this, study. City of Evanston and the Center for the Study of Diversity and Democracy formed a research collaborative in January 2023. My colleague Tabitha Bonilla worked in consultation with Robin, Mayor Biss, and some colleagues at the National Opinion Research Center. We did the study through a web-based distribution on city lists. And I think the reason that Robin and other leaders approached me about doing the study is they wanted some validation against the very negative framing by our opponents of reparations work, that doing reparations in any context, but particularly in a local community where Blacks are a minority in a city, doing reparations generates racial conflict in politics. And that's always a bad thing, right? And so we wanted to test that proposition. And I will say to you that when Robin came to my office, I was a little bit skeptical as to whether or not we should do this work, because I was worried that we might find the conflict that our enemies or those who are working against us, frankly, pray for when we try to do this work, right? And so, we gathered, 3,367 responses. And what we found was that people in Evanston really liked reparations. The key question was, do you think that the Evanston reparations program is good public policy? And what we found is that overwhelmingly, Evanstonians in a city with a 16 or 17% Black population overwhelmingly liked it. 70% of our white residents thought it was good public policy, right? And we look at by demographic group, we see that every group is at the 60% mark or higher. That's a very hard thing to generate in a public opinion study around any public policy in America, right? And so we found just the opposite of what those who are opposed to reparations were predicting, and what I was nervous about finding. We found that there's broad sentiment across socio-demographic groups in our city for reparations, right? And so what should we take away from this, right? The findings show that it's possible to achieve widespread support for reparations across ethnic and racial divides. And we can transport that to other spaces and find good outcomes, right? And so how does that matter in the current political climate? Well, support for reparations is growing because of all of your activism, because of success stories like Evanston, because of this global movement for reparations, in a time when our politicians in the United States are allowing democratic backsliding toward what I call the racial dictatorship. So from 1787 until 1968, when the Civil Rights Movement completed its work with the passage of the Fair Housing Act, your skin color determined everything about you in America, whether you had access to voting rights, the ability to marry whom you loved, the ability to get into the labor market, to get credit. And so we don't really become a multiracial democracy until the passage of those four instrumental civil rights bills: Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, the Hart-Celler Immigration Act of 1965, which said you no longer had to be some sort of white person to immigrate into the country, because between 1790 and 1965, the racial origins quota laws meant that really only people from Europe could come and immigrate safely to the United States. And so, what Mr. Trump and most of the GOP in these red states are trying to do is they're trying to turn back the clock, as our elders say, to this period. They want us to go backward to pre-1964, setting, whereby the Civil Rights Act of 1964 will be off the books. And they will be, racial discrimination will be legal again, right? And that is very, very problematic, right? And so what does that mean for reparations? Well, what it means is that, as we see a proliferation of the logic from the Harvard affirmative action case, which overturned 45 years of precedent, saying that public policy decisions could be made in a race-conscious way to uplift people who for 400 years had been subjected to racial discrimination. That takes that off the table in many contexts. And we see politicians in red states moving quickly to extend that logic, banning DEI programs on college campuses, right? Moving quickly to say that you cannot have capital allocation to Black businesses. So suing the Fearless Fund, for example, right? So what you need to think about as advocates of reparations is the reality that reparations is a race-conscious program. And if all of these other things are banned, the programs that you're advocating for will be banned as well. They will be made illegal. There are already bills moving forward in state legislatures like Oklahoma and Florida that will say that it will be illegal for municipal governments to give reparations, right? So how do we push back against that? We've got to push back by mobilizing progressive and voters of color in an environment where, frankly, Mr. Biden is losing. He is losing re-election, in large part because he does not have the enthusiasm of Black voters and Gen Z voters. He's falling for all kinds of nonsense like banning TikTok, which is going to further alienate him from the people that he needs to turn out. Cracking down on student protests, going to further alienate him to the people that he needs to turn out. And so what we need to do, this is the support among Black voters that we ran we've been running surveys all cycle. So you see the boomers, the blue line are people who approve or strongly approve of Biden. The boomers, Gen X, where I am, look at the millennials. The red grows as we move down in generation. If we don't get 25% of these people to turn out and vote for Mr. Biden, he is going to lose. Normally we'd say about 18% of them turn out. Last time, 28% turned out. If 25% don't turn out, he will lose. We also see that he is losing appeal among Black voters. So my alma mater, Morehouse College, is supposed to host him in 2 weeks for a commencement address. They don't want him there. The alums don't want him there. It's very likely that the scene from there will be people turning their backs on him while he's giving his speech, right? That quad on Morehouse College is where the funeral of Dr. King was held. It's regarded as sacred space. And there are people that oppose his stance on the war that are agitating now to make huge disruption. That's his biggest opportunity to mobilize Black male voters coming this spring. If I were advising him, I would advise him to not go, but he will go, right? And so how can you as activists take advantage of this? What you can do as activists is seize upon this summer when the Democratic Party, the people that have power in these state legislatures, are really nervous about the reelection, and ground your demands for reparations, right, has a potential sort of argument that you can make to POTUS and others that this is a way to bring these people back into the fold. That's the way you get greater power, greater access. Your time is now, because frankly, if Mr. Trump wins on November 8th, whether or not any of this work we're doing is legal, will be legal going forward in 2025, is not exactly an open question, right? So I'll stop there. Thank you so much for listening, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you for that. And we know that you have a hard stop. Can you let me know now so we can manage the Q&A properly?
Yeah, so I'll if we could stop at the 55, that will be perfect.
Perfect. I have a ton of questions, but I'm going to open it up for questions from the leaders that are participating. You can just unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, can you hear me, Robin?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Yeah, this is Kevin Woolfolk. I'm with the Kansas City Reparations Coalition. And we discussed this matter concerning what I consider a lack of will on the part of the federal government and the president to even address reparations properly because they are traumatized by white sentiment. My question to you, brother Tillery, is this. I just don't think we have enough time to convince Joe Biden. Joe Biden pretty much believes he's done everything he can do for Black people at this point. On the reparations issue, I don't believe that we are in a good spot with him to even rescue him by getting him to convinced at this point to show strong support for reparations. So my question is, do you think we have time to convince the Biden administration that they should take up this issue? Or should we just try to focus on trying to convince our young people to come out and vote for anybody? Because a lot of them don't even want to vote at this point. They don't believe.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. You do have time. The time is now, but you've got to stop asking so politely. You've got to say to him, and it's not just him, it's the 50 Black members of Congress. I mean, Speaker Hakeem Jeffries will not bring H.R. 40 to the floor because he lives in the same ecosystem of fear that dominates the Democratic Party. And so, President Obama told Rev Sharpton and others, back with the recovery money, y'all have to make me do stuff. Come in here asking all politely to do stuff. You've got to make me do it. It's like when President Johnson was telling Dr. King on those videos, Reverend King, it would be great if there was a civil rights march in Selma that would make me use the power of the federal government. That's what's missing, right?
Awesome. Thank you. Let's jump to, I think I saw John Pierre first and then Sister Lily second.
Thanks, Robin. And Professor Tillery, thank you for your presentation. And I also want to reiterate, thank you so much for coming to speak to us in New Jersey to give your guidance and consultation on our survey.
Yeah, great to see you, John Pierre.
Yes, likewise. And I'm glad to hear that the students in Northwestern are organizing and that the faculty are supporting them in their efforts. The question I have for you is I think I agree with you on the point that yes, electing Biden and gaining power in that sense is important, but I think that's just only the first step in the sense that even if Biden were to be elected and take up reparations as a cause, right, that would still not address the fact that the Supreme Court still has this particular view about race-conscious policies. And to your point, it's not just that it's the past 50 years of president, but that even Bakke itself was not about addressing past wrongs, right? But that was about diversity. And now the terrain on which addressing past wrongs is fought on is around the issue of diversity and not about remedying past wrongs. And so the question I have for you is, this is a multi-part fight. You talk about action in the streets, having a Democratic president in power who supports reparations, but the next step is also a question about the Supreme Court itself, whether that means there should be as a kind of litmus test for the court in nominating justices who have the Ketanji Brown Jackson approach of recuperating the original interpretation of the 14th Amendment to be race conscious, but also the idea that others have brought about either limiting the jurisdiction of the court on Reconstruction amendments, right? All these other host of things. And so I asked you, after the election of Biden, the legal landscape is still not conducive to reparations as a race conscious remedy. So what is that after the next sort of, what is the call on the demand on Biden after, if we were to mobilize not just the calling for reparations, but also what to create the landscape that makes it possible?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers. But what I will say is that electing Biden is defensive. We've got to put this very problematic, flawed president back in power, because the alternative is, very dangerous to us. If you are not someone who could have walked through the Woolworths in Montgomery, Alabama, the front door to get service in 1945, then Donald Trump is a danger to you, right? And so all progress stops if he is returned, right? My personal view is that, like Dr. King, with Democratic presidents, is you reelect them and then you give them hell to hold them accountable. That's what we've got to do. Part of that strategy is all of this great data that you all are collecting in your studies. We've got to fill the courts with lawsuits. Got to fill the courts with lawsuits. Not that they are necessarily going to turn to victories, but the probative values of the lawsuits is that they are impossible to ignore, right? And so that would be my recommendation. And then you've got to keep holding Black and brown and Asian politicians in the Democratic coalition accountable. They should not be, able to just skate along with the Democratic Party line. They should be afraid for re-election in all of our spaces if they do not give us what we need in terms of racial justice, right? I see Enid's hand.
Yes, and we
Hi.
have one person before Enid.
Okay,
Did
good.
she
Okay,
leave the
sure.
meeting? I think
Yeah.
it was Sister Lil. Did she leave the meeting?
No, I'm here. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, my name is Sister Lily X. I'm the National Youth Commission co-chair of NCOBRA, but I'm actually in Chicago, and so serve on working on reparations in a young person, millennial, Gen Z capacity, along with my sister on the call, Miranda Alexandria. So I guess I understand the two sides of the coin that we're dealing with. I also work in politics myself and campaign management, so that's kind of the background to this question. There is a big push right now, specifically in Illinois, to get Cornel West on the ballot. He's running for the presidency. Do you think that trying to attach the reparations movement or progress to third party improvement should be our focus? Well, because in my opinion, as a young person, it seems like we're going down an unfortunate commitment, to just continue to ping pong this topic, this very important and liberating topic, to these two major parties that at different times in history have not been truly serving to this mission and movement. So, and I don't think if they ever will. I mean, that's just my
Sister,
honest.
let me pause you so we can, Professor Tilley has a hard
Yeah.
stop. Let's get an answer from that part at least.
Yeah, so that would be, I guess, my conversation is, should we attach it to Cornel West because he's already talking about it, and future third parties if he does not, if he doesn't get the support he needs this year?
Absolutely not. And I say that as someone who's known Cornel West for 30 years. I shared an office with his wife. Absolutely not. A vote for any third-party candidate in an electoral college system is a vote for Donald Trump, is a vote for overturning the Civil Rights Act, is a vote for Black inequality. So that's the first reason. Beyond the structure, a third-party candidate revolving around the personality of Cornel West is an impossible task for victory. Now, you live in Chicago, you live in a blue state, you want to write in Cornel West, fine. It's not going to hurt anything, right? But if you live in a swing state, a vote for Cornel West is a vote for Donald Trump. and you've just got to think defensively. The third party mission is untenable in a constitutional arrangement where in a deadlocked electoral college, the Congress filled with people who identify with the Democratic Party and the Republican Party will pick the president. That's why Mr. Trump wants to steal electors, because it then goes into Congress, and wait, it's not each individual member of Congress, it's state delegations. And because of gerrymandering, the Republicans will always win that. A vote for Cornel West is a vote for Donald Trump. And then beyond that, Cornel is just completely unsuited to be president. But I don't have time to go into all of that. Edith, I'll close with you. And then, I'll
Lovely
be a
to
little
see
late to where I
you.
need to go.
I'll
Yeah.
keep it short. Anti-DEI in the private sector, the pushback. How do we, that's where I work with private companies. Yeah, just a word on that.
I would say just forget about all of that right now. It's not important. All of the anti-affirmative action cases in college, the anti-DEI stuff, that's all just chopping up. It's desensitizing us to what they really want to do, which is overturn the Civil Rights Act. We've already lost affirmative action. We're losing corporate DEI. That doesn't matter right now. The only thing that matters is that we connect those attacks to what they ultimately want to do, which is make it so that you and I will be forced to go through the back door again. And we've got to put all of our focus on that. So if Charlemagne the God, or, who's the other loudmouth black guy, the sports guy, what I'm talking about.
Stephen A. Smith.
Stephen A. Smith, yeah. If they want to say, corporate DEI programs are irrelevant, like they're just doing that because the Republicans are paying them to generate that noise. So we focus there, and Trump and his people are planning to overturn the Civil Rights Act. So like, just ignore that. Equity is not optional. If the Civil Rights Act stays in place, then all those corporations will have to have equity programs. We're just going to have to sue them like we did in the 80s to get the DEI programs back. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Peace and love to you all.
Thank you.
Struggle. And I'm so happy you all are working on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Professor Tillery can be reached. We put his center information in the chat. You could reach out to his center directly, stay involved, or at least informed on the programming, the surveys. He does have workshops and things. I do believe some of them are public access, but you can reach him there. Also, whenever we have programming like our symposium, Professor Al Tillery will always be included in that. So more to come. Unfortunate that we couldn't get more time from him. I would say that we don't do much on voter activity here at First Repair, but Cam Howard has been singularly focused on that with Earn the Black Vote campaign. And Cam, if you don't mind just putting that information in the chat so folks are aware of it. Without Professor Tillery being here, I think there was one more. Oh no, we got to Sister Edith. Okay, so we were done with the questions. So with that, we can actually move on to our partner updates. And I'll start. First Repair, we are really looking forward to our regional retreat in Tulsa. If you haven't received any information, just save the date for the 13th of June through the 15th of June. This is not one of our regular events where we're able to sponsor travel and hotel for participants other than the few presenters that will be there. What makes this event different than our symposium is that this will be centered around self-determination, inner repair. Brother Jamoke, what are you framing it now as? Are you there? Either way, this will more be about
self-repair.
What'd you say? Self-repair.
Self-repair.
We will be focused on healing ourselves, cooperative economics, and so on. And what more fitting of a place than Tulsa, Oklahoma, the home of Black Wall Street, for us to have that dialogue there. At this point, confirmed presenters are Dr. Julianne Malvo. Appropriately, we will have an economist there. That will be the focus, and also some wellness and healing programming. We're looking forward to getting some direction from Sister Nikichi on there. And a few other really special treats. We'll have a welcome reception at Fixin's, which is a Black-owned restaurant in Greenwood. And of course, we'll have our TOSA leaders presenting along with the TOSA Black Wall Street. In addition to that, follow us on firstrepair.org to stay updated on what we're doing. We've been very active in the field, seeing many of you. And next, we'd like to move on with ICTJ. So Virginia is not able to make it today. She's at a conference, but we have her colleague, Emma Merritt Canillo. Thank you for being here, Emma.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I just want to share a very brief update from ICTJ that we've continued to support local efforts for reparations, and most recently, that's been the Advisory Council on Reparations in Washtenaw County, Michigan. For those who may not be familiar with that initiative, it might be interesting to know that the council was established, or is established, as a permanent body under the Board of Commissioners after the Racial Equity Office conducted initial work through an exploratory committee on reparations. And then we'd also like to just uplift some of the great, really innovative work that's happening at the local level and share a resource that might be useful to everyone if you haven't already come across it. And this is the narrative house that was developed by Liberation Ventures. I believe last year on this call, Liberation Ventures presented about the narrative house, but it wasn't yet final. And so I'll drop a link in the chat of the final product if you find it useful. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. And next we have Cam Howard, Reparations United.
Greetings, Robin. And yes, I want to report on the Earn the Black Vote campaign. I'll put in the chat that Professor Tillery really gave a scholarly justification of the entire campaign. We at Earn the Black Vote have reached the exact same conclusions that he presented in his report. The purpose of Earn the Black Vote campaign is to use the voting power of Blacks at this particular time to force, make, coerce President Biden to establish a reparations commission before the election. We have 3 phases of our campaign. The first phase we completed, which was a 30-day messaging campaign to 2,300 President Biden's closest influencers. We had tremendous engagement with those ads, over close to 1 million ads were ran through that 30-day period. The second phase, second and third phases, which we're into now, the second phase consists of 2 polls. One is a national poll. The other poll is 2 swing states we just concluded. Our Michigan poll, both polls asked us one question. If President Biden was to establish a reparations commission before the election, would it be more likely, less likely, or would it make no change in your voting in November? We had overwhelming results that it would have a tremendous change. In Michigan, he would add 150,000 votes, which would mean a victory in Michigan, and we're projecting that in the other swing states. Our report, we're releasing a press release today. We're waiting right now on a quote from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee to put in our press release that will now announce the results of that poll. We're pushing Biden. Biden is being pushed. We're hearing it from people who have close ties to him, that he's leaning toward this right now. So phase 3 of our campaign is our messaging campaign to the Black electorate. Everyone here needs to be part of this campaign in your local spaces, because it hasn't come from around the country. It can't come from one organization or one city, one state. It has to come from around the country. So our phase 3, go to our website, click on our messaging ad. We have an 80-day campaign where we have 4 particular messages for 20 days, each message sequence around the power and dependency of the Black vote, the political will that's already been established, that this is an historical moment for Biden and democracy in America, and that reparations benefit all of America. So we need you to actually, I got 39 seconds left. We need you to join on this campaign. There's and I want to end with this. There's some misinformation going out that joining this campaign will hurt your 501c3 status. But those who don't know, the 501c3 regulations around lobbying is only targeted toward the legislative branch of government. It's not targeted toward the executive branch or the judicial branch. So there's no harm to your 501c3 status by joining on in this campaign. Again, it's only targeted to a legislative branch and federal level, state and local levels, not the executive branch. So you can lobby the governor, and you can definitely lobby the president. And my 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam, for that excellent and very timely report. And with that, we're going to move on, unless there is someone from Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center that has any updates. Okay, we're going to move on to our regional reports, and actually would love to switch this order around and have Jean Pierre go first, representing the East region. Thank you, Jean Pierre.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Robin. Let me just get my timer going. So for the updates for the East region, I'll just read from my notes. So first in New Jersey, on April 17th, the New Jersey Reparations Council held their 5th public session. It was a virtual session hosted by the Public Safety and Justice Committee. The next event for the New Jersey Reparations Council will be an in-person event on Juneteenth on Wednesday. It's going to be held in Newark at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, and it's going to be moderated by the historian and New Yorker journalist Jelani Cobb. In terms of New York, the 40 Acres and an EV group, which is sort of organized by Senator James Sanders, met with Cheryl Davis from the San Francisco Reparations Commission. She provided insight into the San Francisco submission process, the roadblocks they face, and their successes. Also, the History Committee, as part of the EV group, are looking to the history of New York broadly, from its inception as a colony to present day, to identify the vast harms that require repair in New York. Also, they're thinking about breaking up the history of New York into 5 time periods, and also into regionally in several different areas. Also related to New York, as part of our East Region meeting, Dr. Daniels presented. He is a member of the New York State Commission. He pointed out that there are some needs that the Commission has, including funding, research support, and a budget. The members of the committee have not yet met formally, because once they meet formally, that kicks in the clock in terms of when they need to produce reports. Right now, they're meeting informally. They had an initial meeting where 6 of the 9 members of the New York task force have met. They're planning on doing a retreat to build basically trust with one another and get to know one another. And then thinking about their plan for when they want to initially meet. They've asked the legislators who sponsored the bill if they could get funding for the task force, if they could work with a government state agency to support the work of the task force, like in California, where the Department of Justice California supported the work of their task force. And then in Greenbelt, Maryland, the commission has sputtered a bit. It doesn't have the proper guidance and support that it needs. They are still trying to figure out their parameters and defining reparations. There are some committees that are doing important and worthwhile work at the moment. The commission has a kind of different or more expansive mandate than other commissions, in which they're looking at reparations not only for Black people and for slavery, but also for indigenous communities in Greenbelt, Maryland. They're one of the few task forces that have this mandate. And also it was mentioned that Nkechi presented to their task force and provided some very helpful insights. And then last is Maryland. There aren't too many updates in Maryland. The Boston Reparations Task Force is going to meet next Sunday, 20th. And then there's a reporting deadline for the state task force bill that has been extended to the 30th. And so those are the updates for the East region. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And next, I would love to, I'm gonna actually say a few things about the goals of these regional meetings and the strategy sessions. It is to do exactly what we see happening in the East. You're going to hear about incredible outcome from what's happened in the South region, but this is to share best practices, to not only report, but request what your needs are, what the barriers are, and so on. In most cases, another initiative has overcome them or is facing the same barrier, and we can work together to overcome them. So in the East, as you know, New York established a task force. New York State Reparations Commissioner was there to speak directly. That was Dr. Ron Daniels. And there's been great outcomes coming out of at least the East, the Midwest, and the South. So before we get to Brother Jamoke's report in the South, this is an example of what we can do. I saw on Instagram, I'm actually embarrassed to say, that's where I was notified of the third anti-reparations bill being introduced in the Tennessee State Assembly. The first we know was in Congress. The second was in the New York, Florida State Assembly. And this bill had actually been working its way through the Tennessee Assembly for over a year, passing the Senate. And by the time we were organizing, it was up for a vote within days in the House. And the South responded in incredible ways, including organizing a legal team for a lawsuit if it went that far. But Jamoke is going to tell you about the great outcomes of what happened as a result of the work in the Southeast Regional Group. Jamoke, thank you for your leadership.
All right, thank you, Robin, for already setting me up. Okay. So before I report on Tennessee, I just wanted to report it out on another success story in Vienna, Virginia, where they've been working on getting control of their family cemetery. And so one step was to get it from private control to local municipal control, and they're making progress with that, with the ultimate goal of getting it back in control of the family in the Carter family cemetery. But in terms of Tennessee, I think Tennessee is a great success story in terms of how these regions and the purpose of this group to work together collectively. When Robin reported to us what was going on in Tennessee, we immediately jumped on it and we produced a video. We had a press release that came out. We had our statement read at the state legislature in Tennessee, and the original vote was going to be on April the 4th. The assassination date of Martin Luther King, and that got pushed back 2 or 3 times, and now it's been pushed back to January of next year. So we count that a great victory. The petition that was put up quickly got up to 1,000 signatures. Is now to 3,000 plus signatures. We got media coverage, and as Robin said, we also had a legal strategies meeting for if the bill had passed, what were going to be our next steps and our response to the bill. But that's right now in a holding position. So I just wanted to thank our leaders in Tennessee, the commissioner in Memphis, Commissioner Dr. Edmund Ford, and also the community activists out of Memphis that helped to guide us, lead us in a lot of this work. Reverend Dr. Earl Fisher as well, Sister Linda Mann with Redress Movement, you, Robin, and others who contributed to pushing this out and pushing this forward through our networks. And we did a really good job at pushback, and we see the result of that.
Awesome. That completes your report?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And I'll jump in with the Midwest report. I will start with Kansas City. Kansas City Reparations Coalition City Council voted in favor of $160,000 increase for a total of $210,000 budget allocation, totaling $360,000 for the Mayor's Commission on Reparations in the 2024-25 budget. That is a huge win. It allows Kansas City to do its work. In addition to that, the Black Audit Project was in Kansas City, and I could tell you that they reported in a fine way in Geneva, Switzerland at the United Nations, where many of us just left the Permanent Forum of People of African Descent third convening. And we also have KCRC initiated meetings with local clergy to engage the faith-based community in the reparations movement. I'm glad that that was noted. I'm encouraging all initiatives to engage your interfaith communities. Evanston Reparations Committee, we have on here. I'll actually just not read from these notes. I can tell you the biggest update is that the city of Evanston will be and has actually transferred its reparations fund to a Black-owned bank. This was a hard-fought battle, one that can have incredible value add beyond the direct benefits that we are providing in Evanston. And Liberty Bank has also provided other reparative financial products and services available to reparations recipients. Liberty Bank President Todd McDonald has been supportive of our reparations initiative for 3 years, and there will be a bank representative at our committee meeting, which is on May 2nd. All of our meetings are hybrid and they are public and virtual. So please do listen in and consider banking Black with your initiatives. It's important that we model reparations in every part of this process. And Liberty is a bank to consider. There are other Black banks to consider as well. In addition to that, we have continued dispersing. And one thing I would like to clear up, the media has misreported on a lot of that regarding the banking. It states that it is a state fund. Actually, Evanston is a municipal fund. I think everyone knows that. And it also states that this $17 million transfer, it implies it happened in one transaction. In all fairness, the balance of the funds, it comes in over time as tax revenues. So I just wanted to clear that up. And then we have Lawrence Habitat. Lawrence Habitat has been working with the city and county on a plan to address homelessness in the community. There is initiative that is happening there to support homeownership, Black homeownership for families. Then we have the incredible work that continues to happen in St. Paul. The St. Paul Recovery Act Community Reparations Commission was seated last month. I believe their appointed chairperson is on this call. If you are, congratulations on that leadership position. And elected as chair and co-chair this last week. Also in August, they will host their second Black Lives Matter Reparations Conference. So please do follow the work under the leadership of Traherne and Black Lives Matter St. Paul for more information there. And then lastly, I'll just give a couple updates on the Permanent Forum of People of African Descent convening and how it was relative or related to the local movement. So we are a small part of a global movement for African descendant repair, liberation, empowerment, and so on. And so the local initiatives, all of you here and the communities that you represent and your organizations have really inspired what's possible internationally. And so several of us were there, maybe a dozen or more were there that are in this local specific space, and we're able to deliver interventions to this forum, recommendations on how to strengthen the reparations movement. We also participated and hosted side events. First Repair hosted a side event with our partners, Redress Network and Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center, as well as the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Miami. In addition to that, myself and Cam Howard facilitated the Permanent Forum's Reparations Strategy session and delivered recommendations. My recommendations included a directory and guidebook with a glossary for local reparations initiatives across the nation, the world, really, so that they can be implemented locally, as well as endorsement of the lawsuit in Tulsa under the leadership of Attorney Demario Simmons. I think that will set a great precedent. In addition to that, I requested or recommended a reparations committee that is funded so that the work can continue to be synchronized and implemented. And that much of that was heard in the final reports from the Permanent Forum. This work can be found on the United Nations website. Bailey, if you get a chance to put it in the chat, the civil societies group is heavily engaged in reparations work. Let me see what else was on that report. That is it. So we do have a few more minutes before I give closing remarks with some upcoming events from all of our partners. If there is anyone here from Perfect, Robin, and then if someone wants to prepare themselves that's from the West and would like to give any type of West region update, please do that. First, we're going to go with Robin. Hey, Robin, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I just want to say here in St. Louis, descendants of the St. Louis University enslaved had a historic night last night. The president of the Student Government Association and the senators, they all stood in solidarity with the SLU. They voted last night to pass Senate Resolution Bill 00724, which demands the St. Louis University leadership to adhere to our 10-point reparations plan, to build a monument and a whole host of other things. They submitted that resolution to the leadership today. And so it was a beautiful, historic moment, and we're super excited for their support. So that's what I wanted to report out.
Congratulations, Robin. You've been working so hard on that. So thank you for your leadership. I actually just made an introduction to someone in Louisiana that I think could follow your model. So I hope you're able to give her some advice.
Yes, I definitely will. I was busy, but I did chime in and let her know I will be on the meeting, and I'm looking forward to it. But we actually are meeting with the president's office tomorrow, and we're super excited. So stay tuned.
Amazing. Awesome. And then are you still speaking, Robin? Because
No, go ahead. I was, but that's okay. Go ahead.
You sure?
I was just saying, because our case is a little different than everybody else, even though we do have a reparations commission here, and I don't think Delisha is on here right now to speak about that. Because we know we are fighting against the institute, not fighting against, but we are fighting for reparations against the institution. And it's a little different, but I think it's super important because this win is very significant because there are multi-dimensional type of harms across. So like with Robin in with redlining and us with universities, all of it is very important. So, but we're super excited about that support because when the students start talking, that's when they listen. So thank you.
That's right. And one thing I want to encourage everyone is it takes very little effort to just reshare information. So if you're on social and you see the leadership of the SLU or any other initiatives, just reshare it to amplify the message. It's always important to share it with links and so on. And then I want to thank Sister Nikichi for putting in the chat that she has compiled the videos of I think it's mostly American local leaders that were at PFAD, and you can see everyone's intervention. I think there's a dozen or
some
more.
of them, not all of them. There might have been about 12 to 15 of them that was able to capture a 55-minute segment for my radio show. So it's not everybody, but yours is there. Cam's is there. There's loads of folk who are, Enith is there, in the line. Yeah. Lisa Holder. Yeah.
I saw Dr. Cheryl Grills. Thank you for that. I've actually already reshared it several times with folks that weren't there. So it's thank you. It was such a quick response to share. And then we have, was someone from the West region, anyone in the West region have anything to report? Okay, if not, what I will recommend that you do is if everyone here can put your organizations in the chat and how you can be followed. Definitely, if you want to stay updated on what's happening in the local movement and events and so on, I'm highly recommending that you follow Reparations United, Reparations Education Project, and so many others. But if you could put this information in the chat, Bailey actually will follow up when we send out the recording of this video with any information that we have that you want to be shared. And so I'm going to close with this. A few announcements. KC Reparations Coalition monthly meeting is April 29th, 6 p.m. Via Zoom. The speaker will be Cam Howard, and he will discuss Earn the Black Vote. If you're here from that initiative, please put the information in the chat or a link. KC Reparations Coalition will host a breakfast meeting for local clergy on April 26th. So if you have anyone in that area that is a clergy or a lay leader, please do encourage them to come. The City of Evanston Reparations Committee is on May 2nd. It's a Zoom meeting, and we will have Liberty Bank as a presenter among our regular business. I'd also miss adding that we've begun taking next steps in our next form of redress in Evanston, which will be economic development, approving a report to get to our proposals. And then we have Black Lives Matter Minnesota will be hosting a Black Justice Reparations rally on Wednesday, June 19th at 5 p.m. at 300 South 306th Street, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And with that, that includes our announcements. Is there anyone here that has an event or a very quick announcement that you would like to share before we close in the next 2 minutes? Yes, I see a few hands. Let's start with Chicago and Miranda.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here. Just wanted to say also on May 2nd, I hope it's not overlapping too much, Robin. We're having a lunch and learn at 86, the old Target for those of you who know in Chicago, 87th and Cottage Grove, and from 12 to 4 p.m. And our open meeting is this upcoming Sunday.
Awesome.
I'll put the link in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Sister Lily X and then Brother Jamoke.
Peace and blessings, everyone. I'm just letting people know about the National Reparations Convention that's going to be happening May 17th through the 20th, I believe. It's going to be in Washington, D.C. That's being put on by the Afro-Descendant Nation. I will be a young reparationist panelist that was asked to speak. So if you're in the D.C. area, or if you know me, or if you're from Cobra, please show up to support, because I'm very nervous and we need young people. So please come.
Thank you, Sister Lily. Brother Jamoke and then Attorney Nakichi.
Yes, two things. One, there's some follow-up meetings in Tennessee and Memphis on the work we spoke about before in terms of they had put forward $5 million reparations, which does not seem like it's going to be affected by what was happening in Tennessee. But there will be a town hall meeting on May 2nd. I believe that's at Reverend Earl Fisher's church. There'll also be a town hall meeting on May the 9th at Kenneth Whalum Jr.'s church. And also, I just wanted to let people know that the Reparations Now podcast is up and running. So if you want to have your story told on the Reparations Now podcast, we already have 2 episodes done. One with Cam Howard, Earn the Black Vote, another one on the Beacon Hill Decatur Initiative. And the next show will be on the Chattahoochee Brick and convict leasing. And then we have some other ones scheduled coming up soon. So contact me at reparationsj@gmail.com. I'll put my information in the chat and we can share your story on the Reparations Now podcast. Thank you.
Awesome. And 1 second, Sister Attorney Nakichi, Bailey, if you could put in the chat, I see questions about how to join the regional meetings. If you could put that link in the chat, that would be helpful before we close out with Attorney Nakichi Taifa.
All right, thank you very much. Just really quick, the last Tuesday of each month, there's the Reparations Movement monthly meetup. So the next one is this Tuesday, April the 30th, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's just a potpourri of what's going on in that reparations movement, a chance to put some faces to some names, and particularly good onboarding for new people. I don't have the exact registration, but on the website, it's in the chat, reparationeducationproject.org. Just scroll down till you see RMMM, or Reparation Movement Monthly Meetup, and can register and join virtually via Zoom. Thank you. Back to you, Robin.
Awesome. Thank you. And that concludes our meeting. Our next meeting will be in May, and we have presenting in May. The Tulsa team. So the Tulsa team will be here presenting in May, helping us gear up for our Juneteenth convening. So please don't miss that. Please do reach out to me if I can be helpful. Otherwise, I will see you in a regional strategy session soon. Have a great day, everyone.
Also, can you get a speaker on grant writing? Thank you.
Okay, yes. Yes.
That would help. Okay,
Okay.
bye everybody.
Thank you for the recommendation, Robin.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.